We're just letting some people come into the room still before we start. Please let us know in the chat box where you are tuning in from. Okay. Josie, Kenya, Joburg. Amazing. Ireland, Cape Town. Wow. Welcome everyone to the Standard Bank
Hello, Carol.
I would like to introduce you all to Verity Price, who will be taking you all through this workshop. She is a global speaker, coach, and world champion, and she has been on our virtual stage before. And this year, she actually trained all three of our Empower Her finalists before they pitched on our stage. So Verity, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. And I see everyone checking in and arriving from all over Southern Africa, Finland, this Germany. Oh my word, we are a global audience today, and how wonderful to all be in the room. I am just going to get my slides up and going so that I am with you and ready to go on this journey. Wow. Okay. Fabulous. So I first of all want to say a massive thank you to Standard Bank Top Women and Topco Media for making today possible. Their commitment to empowering women, upskilling us to be the best we can be and kick some ass out there is exceptional. So please put some love in the chat for Standard Bank Top Women, for Topco Media, for making this happen, because we would not be here without them. And then put some love in the chat for yourselves. You're here for you. And I'm so excited to spend the next hour with you talking about all things presenting powerfully, empowering ourselves to come from our authentic self. And when you speak, for it to be remembered. All right. Wow, there's a lot of us here. The numbers are growing, but I'm going to get started because we don't have a lot of time together, and I want to make this time matter. It's going to be interactive. I will ask you questions. We'll put things in the chat. I'll leave some time towards the end to answer questions. I will also stay past 1 o'clock. I'm happy to stay till about 1:30. So for those of you who want to stay on the call and ask me anything you want to know, I will be here for you. I see someone from Zimbabwe. I can say Mokoro Koto. That is the country of my birth. Lovely to have you here. All right. So I have a question for you today. When you think about presenting, have you ever felt like this, where your throat gets tight, your mouth gets dry, your hands are sweating, your stomach is doing flick flacks, your right leg is doing an Elvis maneuver you didn't ask it to do? I see Sarah saying petrified. Anyone else ever had this, where it's like, oh, I'm just going to do anything I can to avoid speaking in public? It says all the time, always, a lot of the time, dizziness as well. Yes, there's another side effect. Last week, oh my gosh. Okay, so you are not alone. You are not alone. It's estimated that 70% of the world's population fear or avoid speaking in public. Now, that's all very well. The problem with that is Warren Buffett says 50% of your success in business comes from your ability to communicate effectively. And so it's so interesting that this fear holds us back, and it stops us from maybe putting ourselves out there, speaking our truth, sharing our voice. And so many of us are terrified. The butterflies in the stomach. I hear you, Joy. Hopefully at the end of today, they'll be flying in formation. The butterflies are good. I was nervous coming onto this call. There's a lot of you joining us today. So that's good. It means you're excited. It means you care. But it's how do we manage that fear? Now, research was done a few years ago to kind of understand what are people most afraid of. It was spiders, snakes, heights, anything that scared people. The number one thing people were afraid of, speaking in public. And if you think how many of us said, yes, it terrifies us. The number one thing people were afraid of was speaking in public. Number two was dying. I just want that to land for a little bit. People were more afraid of doing what I'm doing right now than they were of dying. And Jerry Seinfeld famously once said, that means if you go to a funeral, the person giving the eulogy would rather be in the coffin. That is crazy for me if I think about it. And here's the thing. You have to speak every single day of your life. You only have to die once. So which do you think you should focus on getting better at? This is not a cryptic question, but if we're going to get good at something, let's go to the thing we do every day and stop fearing it. Stop worrying about it. Now, there's a number of reasons we're afraid of speaking in public, and I want to put it out there. It's not so much that you're afraid of public speaking as you are afraid of public judgment. What are they going to think of me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if it's a career limiting move? And that fear of public judgment holds us back. Now, there's a lot of reasons why we feel the fear, and the stomach churning, very normal one, is the blood leaving your stomach to go to your fingers and your toes to help you run. Your brain literally thinks you're in danger, doesn't know the difference between a speech and actual danger. So it's trying to make you ready to run, which is also why before a big presentation, you might need to run to the toilet. And what your body is doing there is it's helping you lose weight so that you can run faster. So sometimes we just have to tell ourselves a different story about the nerves and thank our body that it cares so much about us doing well that it's trying to make us ready to deliver. So that's the physical side. Another reason why we feel this fear is based in nature. If we had to go into a national park right now, into the Kruger National Park, and look at the animals we see there, we would see there are two types of animals. You have got your predators, your lions, your leopards, your cheetahs, and then you've got your prey, your zebras, giraffes, wildebeest, and they're very different. But the fundamental difference between a predator who's a hunter, who's looking for lunch, and prey that are being hunted and trying not to be lunch, the fundamental difference in the way they're designed is their eyes. Predators, your lions, their eyes face forward because they're hunting. They want to catch lunch. Prey, their eyes are on the side of their heads because they're trying not to be lunch. Okay, so you might never have noticed this about animals before. Now you're going to be looking. Here's my question. When you stand up to give a presentation or even in a virtual space, what direction do human beings' eyes face? What way do our eyes face? Just pop it in the chat and let's see what we're saying there. Do we face forward? Yeah, they're front. Thank you, Carol. They face forward. So your brain goes, I'm lunch. It's a very real reason to be afraid. We are predators. So our job is to get comfortable with eyes on us, to find the people who are smiling, the people that are nodding, to practice eye contact just in one-on-one conversations so that we don't feel so judged and so afraid when we speak in front of people. Okay, so that's the journey that we are going on today. And if you had to give a presentation to a herd of cows, would you be afraid? I'm going to take that's probably a no. We see they're not predators. I don't need to be worried. All right. So what's interesting for me is that babies are not afraid of public speaking. They are not afraid of communicating their needs. And if you've got children, and we all were children once, we know that we have that freedom of expression that we lose at some point. Generally, by the time we go to school and we're forced to talk about subjects we're not interested in, and we're worried about what the other kids think about us. So you probably can resonate with this. At some point, the fear kicks in. Now, I was exactly the same. I was a very confident little girl. I know I look very confident now, but I just want to share a little bit of my story with you because I was a confident young girl. By 7 years old, I was clear. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to go to Hollywood. I wanted to win an Oscar. And I even used to practice my Oscar acceptance speech in my bedroom with my hairbrush. And you can give me a thumbs up if you ever did things like that. But they were big dreams. And I was certain that the world was ready for me. When I was 14, I landed the lead in the school play, and it felt like the start of my dream. I was on my way to Hollywood. I discovered very quickly that getting the lead in the school play was not something the other girls in my class were happy about. And I started being severely bullied. I was pushed out of my social circles. And by 15 years old, I was so traumatized that I had let go of my dreams. I had made a decision that if you stand out in life, someone is going to stand on you, and rather play a small game. Just keep it safe, play small. Even though I still had dreams, I still wanted to act. I couldn't get up on stage to even audition. I was so afraid of the judgment and of failing. And so by the time I was 17, I could not get on a stage in front of people. So much so that I would skip school if it was my turn to read the Bible in assembly, because we had to do that sometimes. So I would be like, Mom, I'm feeling terrible. I can't go to school. And I would get out of it. It worked very well. But eventually my mom was like, hang on, Verity is always sick on a Monday. What is going on? And so she came in the one Monday and it was my turn to read the Bible. And I was like, Mom, I feel terrible. And she looked at me and she said, if you're really sick, you can stay at home. So I'm going to take your temperature to check. And this was the 90s. So it was an old school temperature in the mouth. And she just brought me a cup of tea. She put the thermometer in. She walked out. I'm lying there going, what do I do? I looked at the tea, thermometer in the tea. And then when my mom came back in, I was lying there giving an Oscar performance of how ill I was. She pulled out the thermometer and took one look. And then she was like, okay, well, according to this, you have been dead for a week. I was packed off to school. I had the sweating palms, the closed throat, the dry mouth, the butterflies in the tummy. My leg was doing the Elvis maneuver, and I got up on that stage shaking. I could hardly see the sea of faces looking at me. And I did the only thing I could think to do. I read the shortest verse in the Bible. I just opened it and went, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. I was off that stage. I was never invited to read the Bible in assembly again. And if it had been up to me, that is where my journey with speaking in public would have ended. I went to University of Cape Town. I studied psychology, and I thought, I'm going to be good one-on-one. That's good enough for me. I still had dreams. I still was a confident girl in other ways, but I was not going to get on a stage. But life had another plan. On my 20th birthday, I was sitting, reflecting, being 20, so old, so grown up. And while I was sitting, I was on Noordhoek Beach in Cape Town, having a little bit of a meditation, if you will. And I felt inspired to pick up a pen and start writing. I had a little book with me, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And when I finished, it was clear that I had written lyrics to a song. Never done that before. And I was like, this is weird. And they just kept coming. I could not stop writing. And with those songs, with those words, this dream started to reignite itself. And now it was like, well, maybe I'll be a singer. Maybe I'll tour the world and top the charts. And now I'm in my bedroom practicing my Grammy acceptance speech with my hairbrush, but no courage to step out my room, face my fears, and try and see what I could do. And so I got caught where I think a lot of us get caught, and that is in a tug of war between fear and dreams. And it just pulled me. As much as I wanted to pursue the dream, the fear pulled me back. And if it had been up to me, that's where I would have left it. I was too afraid to risk that judgment and the possibility of failure. It took my father dying very unexpectedly when I was 24 to wake me up to the fact that life is short, it's fleeting, we don't know how long we have on this planet. Why was I suppressing my dreams and avoiding seeing what I was capable of because of fear? And that was the point I decided to push past it. I found a producer that I trusted in. I recorded a demo, and then I did what any bright young woman should do. I followed a man to America. You might get a sense of how that relationship worked out. But the good thing about it was it got me to America, and I couldn't work legally. So when people said, what do you do? I said, I'm a singer. And the more I said it, the more I started to believe maybe I could do it. But to help me do it, I needed to get a coach. And this is the thing in life. If you're trying to level up, to upskill yourself, you need someone who's been ahead of you to help you. And I found a singing coach named Joe. He was a retired singer from Motown. He looked like James Brown's younger brother. He was this beautiful, he was tiny, short little African American man. He had white hair, pearly white teeth. He always used to wear a burgundy velvet tracksuit. It's a complete character. So I went to have this lesson with him, my first lesson, and I very nervously sang a song. And when I finished, he looked at me. He said, Verity, I'm not going to teach you how to sing. I'm going to teach you how to be confident. I was like, you can teach someone how to be confident? How does this work? And Joe proceeded to teach me how to be confident. It was not what I expected. He would turn the music, knock over the microphone, shout at me, clap in my face, invite neighbors in for tea. It was chaos. And every time I got thrown, he would go, Verity, when things go wrong, just keep on. And I was like, this is a very weird way to be learning how to sing and learning confidence. So I wasn't sure if it was working, but I kept going for 5 months. And by the end of it, while I wasn't sure if what Joe was doing was working, it was very clear my relationship wasn't working. And so I came home and I had to start over from rock bottom, but I was ready. I was ready to get on a stage and I was ready to start singing. And I was now pursuing my dream. I'd moved past this very limiting fear because I really wanted to share my songs with the world. I believed that I had a message that mattered. And all of us, you right here today, you've got a message that matters, but we have to find the platform where we want to share it. And so now I was on stage and I had really completely transformed my life. And it was all going very well. I was chasing the dreams. I was hoping to be touring the world by that point. The only thing I was touring was the bar at the end of my road, but I was on the road. I was trying to make this happen. But the thing that was between me and really hitting it big in the music industry was an album. I didn't have the money to record an album. And instead of getting stuck in that problem, I decided to try and innovate. And my sister, Kay, and I sat down back in 2005. We're going back a while. And we came up with this crazy idea that I was going to sell my first album before I recorded it. So I was going to sell something that didn't exist. I was going to disrupt the way things were done in the music industry. And I had no idea at the time that I was about to become one of the world's first online crowdfunders. But I wanted to see if this was possible. And this was the first time since leaving school that I really needed to speak to people. Because singing's one thing, you can hide behind the music and the song. But if you're pitching an idea, and I know a lot of us on the call today, we've got businesses, we've got ideas that we need to land with our customers, you've got things that you need to say that people need to agree to and buy into. I needed people to consider buying an album that I hadn't recorded. Now, I know we call that crowdfunding, but in 2005, what I was doing was called crazy. No one had done it before. But I was so passionate about this crazy idea that I started speaking at any forum I could find, business networks, anywhere where I could have an audience, and I would tell them about my idea. And I would speak from that place of passion and real conviction that I thought it was possible to do this. And the amazing thing that happened was people started buying that album. I sold over 2,000 copies in 25 countries. But what I learned by learning to really have to speak about an idea and get it into the hearts of an audience, I learned this fundamental lesson about communication. And that is that your word creates your world. I really want you to think about that today. Your word creates your world. The way you speak about a dream, about where you're going, about the impact you want to make, about your product, your project, your vision, that's what determines who shows up to help you get there. And so the more I told people I was selling an album that didn't exist, the more I sold it. And as I say, 2,000 people bought it. We recorded it. We gave 10% to charity. And I ended up becoming a lot more famous for innovation and thinking differently than I did for singing. So if you're wondering, why have I never heard of her? I didn't crack the music industry. Suddenly I was being invited to speak all over the world. And I'd go, oh, can I bring my band? And they'd say, no, just come tell us about your project and how we can think differently. And I was like, what? That wasn't the plan. But there was a little lesson in there that sometimes your ego's got one idea for your life and your soul has another. And take it from me, my experience has been when I let go of what my ego thought my life should look like and I started listening to my soul, life got so much easier. So this girl who was faking illness and putting thermometers in cups of tea at 17, at 30 was now sharing stages around the world with some of the biggest professional speakers and motivational speakers, Mike Dooley, Lisa Nichols, John DeMartini, Robin Banks. And this was where I finally discovered what Joe had been teaching me all those years before around what confidence is. I was backstage at a show in Johannesburg with Robin Banks, one of our top South African motivational speakers. He'd given me an opportunity to speak to 700 people to sell them my album. It was an amazing opportunity. I had a little Madonna mic on. I was so excited. Like I was no longer afraid of speaking. These people were going mad because he was very good. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, I've got this singer. You're going to love her story. Let's welcome Verity Price. And they were going wild. I was going wild. My ego was like, oh, yes, I've made it. And with my little headset on and my little outfit, I ran up the stairs to this thunderous applause. And it was like nothing could stop me. And I got to the final step and I tripped and I sprawled face first in front of 700 people. That right there is a reason why people don't want to speak in public. The whole audience just went, oh. And I'm lying face first looking at this like threadbare carpet. And in that moment, all of Joe's training kicked in. I just kind of looked around at these horrified faces and I went, well, folks, I can only go up from here. They laughed. I laughed, dusted myself off, told them my story. And at the end of that event, more than 60% of that room bought copies of my album, which is very unusual when it comes to sales. I think it was because I'd fallen, I'd been vulnerable. It's because I'd been able to laugh at myself. But afterwards, I realized that's what Joe had been teaching me all those years earlier of what confidence truly is. True confidence is when you can be okay with things not being okay. I really want you to think about that. Confidence is the ability to be okay when things are not okay. And one thing I can guarantee you, it's never going to be okay. The tech is going to fail. The microphone's going to do something wrong. You're going to lose your place halfway through. You might trip. You might fall. Things will go wrong. That's life. And as Joe used to say, if things go wrong, just keep on. And here I was years later, having fallen flat on my face in front of an audience. And I was fine because I knew that I could get up, I could connect from that place, and I could carry on. And she worked on her speech for a month, much harder than I did. And I felt a little sorry for her that she was so afraid of speaking and it was so easy for me now. You might get a sense of where this is going. She beat me at this little club contest. And my ego, I still have an ego. Don't think I've let that thing go. It was like, how did this happen? I'm a professional speaker. And then I discovered we'd actually entered an international speech contest, 35,000 people in 149 countries, a 7-month journey to find one world champion of public speaking. And I had left it till the day before to prepare my speech. I was like, what? I can't believe I let this down. So I thought, well, I watched her not just beat me at the club, she went all the way to becoming the Southern African champion with the 6th speech she'd ever given in her life. She's a great storyteller, very nervous of speaking, but she had something she wanted to share. And I watched her go to the world semifinals, where she came second in her semifinal. The man who beat her became the world champion of that year, Ryan Avery. So I was blown away by how hard she'd worked on her speech, the effort she'd put in. I realized that you can improve your speaking step by step by watching her journey. And I wasn't in a rush to enter that contest again. Again, I was starting to feel afraid of failure. I entered in 2015. I had a speech I was quite excited by. I made it as far as Western Cape, where I came third. And again, my ego kicked in, saying, don't do this. That, Toastmasters doesn't get you. Just do what you do. And I don't know if you've ever had this, where you limit yourself because you didn't get it right the first time, and then you just sit out. And that's what I was doing. I was at the back of the room of my life. And in fact, I left Toastmasters to become a mom in 2019. And then COVID hit in 2020, and we were all stuck in our houses. So I had nothing to do. I rejoined Toastmasters, and something in me went, why are you not entering this contest? You've got something to say, enter. And so I entered the International Speech Contest in 2021 with a message from my mum that I grew up hearing, that we should leave the world better than we find it. It's something that rules my life. It's how I like to live my life. It was a message I wanted to share, and I gave it everything. And I was lucky enough in the height of lockdown to become the Southern African champion, to make it to the world semifinals, and be the only speaker left from Africa who was in the world semifinals. They have 28 semifinalists. And I delivered that semifinal speech in August of 2021. And out of 28 semifinalists from a starting field of 35,000 people, I woke up in August, I think it was the 26th or 27th of August, to this news that I was in the finals of the World Championship of Public Speaking. Only woman left standing, all these very distinguished men. And then you had to deliver a brand new speech. So I had been working on a second speech because I backed myself. I was like, I want to win this thing. No one's ever won this from Africa. Women, only 5 women in 80 years have won it. I am giving it everything. And so I had written a second speech about my dad and how he taught me that your life is a book. And if you're not enjoying the read, write a different story. And it really was the message of how I turned my life around and overcame depression through attitude and positive psychology. And I gave that speech everything. And on the 28th of August, 2021, I got to hear the life-changing announcement that I was the first world champion of public speaking from Africa and the 6th woman in history. It was a big moment. And I mean, if you had told that terrified teenager putting thermometers in tea that she had a world champion speaker in her, she would have been like, no, you're crazy. But I'd really discovered that when you're okay with things not being okay, when you know that your word creates your world, that your message matters, that you speak from that place, it's possible to take yourself to new heights. And the thing that really stood out for me in this whole journey was that 2 weeks later, I received a little box in my bedroom, and I opened it up and I pulled this out. So this is the trophy that everyone wants. And it was not lost on me that I've spent my whole life imagining I'm going to win a trophy in my bedroom. And thanks to lockdown, that's exactly where I want it. So be very clear on where you see your dreams coming true. But really, for me, what this comes down to is that every single one of us on this call, the dreams that you're sitting here with, the message that you have to put out there, is that when you find your voice, your authentic voice, that is when you find your power. And so that's what I want to spend today looking at. How do we find our voice and how do we find our power? All right. So I would like to ask you, pop in the chat, and I'm loving the interaction here. You've sat through hundreds of presentations in your life and speeches. What makes for a great speech? Let's just put some of the elements in here that, and thank you for all the love. I'm really feeling it. Thank you. Oh, this is so lovely being with you. What makes for a great speech? Vulnerability. Oh, I love that. Beautiful. Personal storytelling, personal anecdotes, connecting. What else? Authenticity. A takeaway for the audience. Yes. Oh, Mina coming in from India. Lovely to have you here. Humor, eye contact, a great introduction. Okay, I love this. Feelings, it's memorable. Good content, connection, confidence. Relate. We know what makes up a great speech. Body gestures, vocal variety, it's all coming through. I love this. Okay, humility. So you'll notice that there's a mixture of what we're talking about. There's different things that impact us. And that's that's what I want to look at now. And this is something I learned from my coach in the World Championship journey, Lance Miller. He was the 2005 World Champ. He said there's three things that impact an audience when you speak, and it's coming through in the chat. There's a mixture. So the one thing that impacts the audience, but only by about 20% of what they remember, is the mechanics of how you wrote that speech, how you put it together. So the structure, the opening, the body, the conclusion, the PowerPoint. People aren't going to be sitting at a braai 3 weeks later going, oh my word, you should have seen how one part of the content flowed to the next. It's not what they're going to speak about. 30% of what impacts the audience that they walk away with is your message. Okay. And someone said that there's a takeaway for them. And, you know, if you've spoken for an hour and someone's not repeating what you said, you haven't communicated. You know, communication is what gets duplicated. And so when your message matters, when it's important to the audience and they want to go tell someone else, that's when a presentation's been covered. 50%. And if we had to like take the chat and break it up a little bit and see how we if we could like do it by percentages, you'd probably see this is true even in what we've spoken about mattering. 50% of what your audience remembers is your life force, your energy, your conviction, your vulnerability, humility, passion. It was all the things coming through the chat. That's what we remember. So even if you've got a badly structured speech with a half formulated message, if your life force touched people, they're going to be taking you home with them. Now, life force isn't about being an extrovert. I know I've got an extroverted life force. I've shared TEDx stages with very quiet speakers who spoke from such a place of authenticity. So don't sit here and go, oh, but I'm quiet. I don't have life force. If you care about a message, and your message is what gives you life force, if you care about what you have to say and you're coming from that place of conviction, your life force will be felt by the audience. Okay. So really remember this, but start with your message first. The message will inform the mechanics. What you're trying to get into your audience's mind will inform how you should approach your speech. So really start with, Simon Sinek says, start with why. Why am I giving this speech? Why does this message matter? And the why will tell you how you should put the content together. And then the what is, well, and this is what I'm going to say. But if you start from why, that is when your life force comes through, and it also helps you to put the speech together. Okay. So let's look at how we do this and what makes a difference. Because the thing that gets in the way of life force so often, and it's what we spoke about in the beginning, is that fear. You know, and so it's so important that we build confidence. And confidence is a muscle. It's something you build. And anyone, I know there's people here from Toastmasters, will know that it's the standing up and delivering speeches again and again and again that builds your confidence. And when you build your competence, you also build your confidence. So it is learned by doing. There are 4 things that you can do that will help with the next time you present. 2 are very practical and 2 are physiological. Practically, you need to practice. So many, and I coach people globally for presenting. I work with organizations globally to help them upskill their presenting. Most people think that they have worked on a speech if they've worked on their PowerPoint. That is not practicing your presentation. So please, some of you might be going, oh, that's me, and that's okay. It's important to have a good slide deck, delivered and practice. But it's going to help you comfortable with them by filming yourself and watching back. And maybe you're thinking, I don't want to watch back and see nervous habits, you monotone, interesting, and also watch it with the sound switched off. If it's not interesting to watch with the sound switched off, it's not interesting to listen to with the sound switched on. So by watching yourself back, you will see if your life force is there. So take time to practice. Secondly, and this, a lot of people forget to do this as well, get comfortable in the space you're going to present. Online or in person, same rules. I was on this call 20 minutes early today to get comfortable, make sure the slides were working, because you want to set yourself up for success. If I'm working for a new client and I can't get into the room, I'll ask them to send me pictures. I want to know what I'm walking into. I don't want to be on the back foot. So give yourself time to know the room or the space or the platform that you're going to present in, and make sure you've set yourself up for success. So those are two practical things. Practice and practicing. Often if I'm driving somewhere, I talk through my presentation, the humor like that, because I'm not trying to practice it off a sheet. You want to find your conversational voice. We speak like we speak, but somehow when we write a speech, we write like we write instead of writing like we speak. So if you've written a speech, just put it to one side and speak it. So you find that spoken voice. So that's why the practicing is all in the room. Now, physically, what do you do with those nerves? Because they're real. I know the butterflies, the shaking, the knees, the dry mouth. Two things that will really help. The first is to connect to your breath. And the trick here is to breathe out more than you breathe in. When we're nervous, we hold our breath and we breathe through our mouth. When we're relaxed, we breathe in through our nose. So you can do this with me now. So it's in through the nose, holding, and then out through the mouth. And you'll notice that out breath was longer than the in breath. Now, if you don't believe me that this works, I recently had a dentist do this with me. I was very nervous about a big procedure, and he spent 5 minutes playing me classical music. Music also helps, and breathing, because your breathing controls your heart rate. So breathe out more than you breathe in. The second thing you can do, and one of my favorite things to do, is strike a power pose. And you can ask the girls from Topco Media. We were doing this before you came on screen. I speak for a living. I do all of these techniques because I get nervous, because I care. So strike a power pose. And if no one's watching you, do it now, because let's embrace that Wonder Woman, that powerhouse, that woman who has something to say, who wants to give that to the world. Your physiology informs your psychology. So if you're about to go into a presentation and you've been sitting like this, you're not going to bring you. But if you've gone and found for the fact that you care, that's going to make a big difference. So go check out Amy Cuddy's work on how your body language affects your confidence. Okay, so those are some things that will really help with the nerves. I hope you are finding this helpful. Are we good? I see people are laughing at themselves. Oh, Carol said, yes, I remember teaching you at GUD how to do that. Fabulous. All right. So let's look at how we approach a presentation. How do we make this work for ourselves? Don't have time today to go into all the theory. I do have a book, so I'll give you details for that just now. It'll really help you. But the one thing I want to share, and I want you, maybe this is going to be a moment for you about presenting. I realized after winning the world championship, and I was really reflecting on what speaking is, I realized that a great speech, it's a gift that you give to your audience. Let's think about that. A speech is a gift that you give to your audience. And I'm assuming if you're like me, you enjoy receiving and giving gifts. But we call it presenting. It's got the word present in it. And to present means to give. So when you start structuring your presentations as a gift for your audience, you stop worrying about you. They say average speakers worry about themselves, good speakers worry about the message, great speakers worry about the audience. And I don't know who said it, but preparing a speech without your audience in mind is like writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. Okay, so just think about that. So a speech is a gift that you give to your audience. You have choices in how you wrap a gift. Now, for me, what they take home is your message. And we're going to talk a little bit about that now. The way you wrap it is the storytelling and the structure. And they have to enjoy getting to the message. You don't ever start with the message on the outside, because there's ways you can wrap a present. You could wrap it like this. I don't know if anyone wants that. Or you could wrap it like this. So just quick poll. Do you want the bag or the box? If you had to choose, if I was giving you this gift right now, bag or the box, which one do you want? Box, 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 box always wins. I love it. Why? What is it about the box? A love letter. Yes, to whom it may concern. You would never do that in a love letter. Don't do it for your audience. So presentation. Presentation is key. Interested, curious. You see, I love it. The ribbon, awesome. So people are making a decision about you the minute you start speaking. They're deciding if they want to listen, how you dressed, your slides. They're deciding if they want to lean in and unwrap what you have to say. This makes us curious. You can see there's effort, and curiosity is key in a good presentation. You know, from the way even with an email title, is your subject line going to make someone open it? When you start your presentation, are you going to say something that keeps them listening? So the curiosity is important. And then there needs to be a level of connection of like, oh, this looks like it's valuable to me. Okay, so that's what we want to be creating when we speak. But I want to take you through, how do you turn your presenting into a gift? And all you're going to need to remember is GIFT. So I'm going to make it really easy for you. The first thing that you want to do when you sit down to prepare an important presentation, the G of the gift, is you want to get clear on your message. Because if you can't say your message in a sentence, you're not going to be able to say it in an hour. And that's Diane Boyer. That's not me. I love it. If you can't say your message in a sentence, you won't be able to say it in an hour. So look at what you need to communicate. This is Simon Sinek again, and come back to why is this important? And what's the purpose of this? What do I want them to know, do, or feel when I finish speaking? Now, a great message is 10 words or less. It's a sentence. It has an action statement to it. So it's a clear call to action, or it's something that's very easy for people to remember to do. And it's rhythmic. They often rhyme. I'll give you some examples now. And I call them sticky statements. A sticky statement is something that you're going to repeat to someone. In fact, as I've been going through this, I've been giving you some sticky statements. Your word creates your world. Now you can see it's rhythmic, it's easy to say, and it's sticky. Your word creates your world. There's also a little bit of rhyme in there. So your word creates your world. Confidence is being okay with not being okay. There's a rhythmicness to it. There's repetition. So you want to find a message that people can repeat. My world championship speech was write a different story. The instruction was pick up your pen, which was a metaphor, but pick up your pen and write a different story. 2 years later, people are still messaging me to say, I'm writing a different story. I'm turning my life around. So get clear on your message, 10 words or less, and a nice sticky statement. So that's where you start, because that's what you're wrapping. The I of the gift is to intentionally craft your content to support that message. Now, your content might be technical stuff that you're needing to communicate in a business setting, or it might be a story that you use to reveal the message. So if I'm trying to talk to my staff and tell them honesty is the best policy, I can't start there. I have to tell them a story that takes them on the journey of honesty being the best policy and reveal that. So you see, guys, that's why honesty is the best policy. Again, a nice sticky statement. So basic things for intentionally crafting your content. You need a killer introduction. You've got 30 seconds to make them care, grab their attention, preferably with some curiosity. So get them to go, oh, like I want to listen. Then your body is 3 to 5 points. So you might flesh that out with examples, with slides. But you don't want more than 5 things that you're going to tell the audience. And each point needs to support one message. If it's honesty is the best policy, that one message. Words, your word creates your world, only content that proves that message. And then you want a killer introduction, a killer conclusion. And for me, and if you look at this again, for me, the conclusion is like the ribbon. Someone said they loved the ribbon. Ties it all together. Okay, so you want to finish strong. So this is the hard work of presenting. And as I said, I do have a book, Present with Power. It's an ebook, and it can really take you through how to intentionally craft your content. Unfortunately, I can't cover that in an hour. But this is where you spend most of your work wrapping your message in really well-crafted content. The F of the gift is you want to make sure you fill in the gaps for your audience. So you want to make sure you're not leaving them with any questions in their mind and confusion. So this is where you want to avoid acronyms, abbreviations, because if someone hasn't heard that before, they might stop listening, they might lose interest, they might feel stupid. And so it's really important, if you're going to say an acronym or an abbreviation, to quickly explain it. Until everyone's on the same page, you want to fill in those gaps for your audience and take out the content that you think is actually going to muddy your message. So here it's like looking at how am I going to fill in the gaps, and also what can I take out that's muddying that sticky statement, that one sentence that I want my audience to know, do, or feel when I finish speaking. So the filling in the gaps often comes from running your content past other people. Is this making sense? What would make more sense for you? How can I adjust this? And this is where you have to embrace what I call a growth mindset. Are you prepared to make friends with feedback and adjust your presenting style and your approach to match what the audience needs? This is not easy. When I was trying to win the World Championships, I received more than 200 pieces of written feedback about my speeches, and I had to coach myself to apply the feedback that worked. So fill in the gaps to the audience. Again, you're not making your love letter to whom it may concern. What does the audience need from this speech, and how can I make sure I fulfill that for them while I'm speaking? And then the last step of writing a really killer presentation, the tea of the gift, is to make sure, as I said with this ribbon, is that you tie it all together with your conclusion. Now, a conclusion, please don't ever say in conclusion. Please don't do that. The audience should know you're coming to the end. It's like a song. No one ever finishes a song in conclusion. No, finish the song. Make it clear. I'm coming to the end. So how do you make it clear you're coming to the end? You start tying back to things you've already said. And I did see a link going into the chat about you can go watch my World Championship speech, and it's 7 minutes. So go check it out, because hopefully you'll see these 4 steps. But by the time I got to the conclusion of that speech, I had started by saying I used to love being read fairy tales when I was a little girl. So I wanted the fairy tale. That was my dream. And then I tell how my life was a scary tale. There definitely was no fairies happening until I was about 41. But when I get to the conclusion, the way I started tying it together was going, do you know what I've realized? Fairy tales are great to read to my son. The audience now knows, hey, she started with fairy tales. He's looped back to it. We must be getting towards the end. And then I just tied in all the golden moments of the speech where there'd been really important pieces. I brought them back to remind the audience that they were the authors of their life, that they had the chance to pick up their pen and write a different story. But it was only linking back to things I'd already said. So the conclusion is so important. I really believe that if you own your opening and you own your ending, that is when you will own your audience. And about this today is that a great speech is also a little bit about dating. Really got to get them interested and go, isn't this fabulous? And they want to know more. That's your introduction. Body of your presentation, there's a little bit more flexibility there. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to remember everything. You can trip and fall on your face. You can go, hey, I need forgiveness. If you've got them curious and they're like, I'm dating you, I'm in, I'll take them. It's a little bit like a breakup. And you don't want to end a presentation with someone saying, oh, thank goodness that's over. You want them to be sad that you've left. Okay. So ladies, I'm putting it out there. Treat your presentations like a relationship where you want them wishing you hadn't finished speaking. Okay. There you go. So that is how we start to create killer presentations. You get clear on your message, you wrap it in intentionally crafted content that's got that killer intro, takes them on the journey, make sure you fill in all the gaps for them, and then tie it together and end with power, with a clear call to action. All right. Whew, I've given you a lot. I said I would leave some time for questions. I'll leave this up here. What can I add in, fill in the gaps for you that I haven't touched on in the time we've had? I don't know I think the Topco team will help me, because I know the chat has been going mad. And I think they've been coming through in the chat and not in the Q&A. Here one comes. Fabulous. We were told we need to start with the history, then we need to talk about the present and conclude with the future. Hazel, I love that. So you absolutely can. There's a timeline in speeches. It depends on the type of speech. That also comes to body language. So we read left to right in the West, so the audience will follow left to right. You actually have to reverse. So if I'm going your left, it's my right. So I'll say, when I was growing up as a little girl, this is what happened to me. I learned these lessons. I was afraid of speaking, and then as I continued, I met Joe. This is what happens. I now believe that you can find your voice. You can present with power if you do these 3 tricks or whatever I've taught you. So I can take the audience on that journey. It's chronological is useful, and there's nothing wrong with approaching it like that, but make sure you use the space virtually or on a stage to set it in parts of the space that you're presenting in. Thank you. How do you stay motivated during your toughest days? From Precious. I don't always, Precious. I am someone who has a history of depression and anxiety. I will put that out there. I know that if I'm grateful, if I spend time with people I love, if I remember to actually just go be kind to someone else, if I'm not feeling great, how can I help someone else? Those are the little things that help me. But I also take time out. I'm a big fan of going for a massage or a pedicure and going, you know what, I'm having a duvet day. The world won't mind if I'm gone for a little bit, but my purpose is what keeps me motivated. I'm passionate about empowering people to discover that their voice matters and to help them find that. So that also keeps me going. But I'm not going to lie, I have tough days. I am very human. What do we do if the slide we prepared doesn't come up? Oh, great question. So you have to be okay with that not being okay. Go, well, that's not the slide I was expecting. If you need ask time to reset, if it's really important, the audience won't mind. They say, just give me a moment. Don't you love it when PowerPoint does this and reset? Or are you prepared to be agile? So agility is something that you prepare. Just quickly, I see in the chat, how am I changing the slides behind me? In Zoom, when you go to share screen, there's an advanced function and it goes share PowerPoint as a virtual background. But then you have to very intentionally create your slides, knowing that you're going to be, and I'll show you quickly, I can change how big I am and where I am on the screen. So it's a really nice function. But it has no animation. So you see all my slides as I'm revealing, that's a new slide. And the second slide has 2 points. And the third slide has all 3 points. So you do have to think it through. What reading a speech versus memorizing it. If you can read a speech conversationally, it's fine. No one minds. We see top people and, they read and they look up. But if I'm going to read it like this and I'm just going to get through the whole thing because I'm really nervous and I haven't made eye contact and there's now zero life force and no one actually cares that I was in front of them, I wouldn't recommend it. So I have no problem with key cards, but maybe just bullet points and then you know what you're going to say next. Try that. Go for a walk and talk through the content. Find your spoken voice. That can really, really help. How can I address the fear of not speaking proper business language? Each company is going to have a different culture around that. I think all the companies that I coach presenting in, my entire job is to disrupt that and say, you know what, you need to speak so that an 8-year-old or your grandmother would understand you. Because if an 8-year-old or your grandmother wouldn't understand you, chances are half the people in that room with their big, heavy degrees are also getting lost and not listening. So yes, if there's terminology you need to use, do that, but simple words, short words, vivid words, words that paint pictures, but that everyone can understand. That's where I say, just because sometimes we're trying to sound so corporate that no one's actually listening anymore. Oh, okay, let me see. I'm hoping, I don't know if someone's keeping track of who's answering. Okay, how do you fill in the gaps? So, Veronica, gaps are sometimes you're so close to your content that you're not realizing you need to give a little bit more detail for the audience to fully catch up. So I didn't tell it today, but when I talk about speech as being a gift, I talk about the fact that in our household, we have a white elephant Christmas party. And then I go, for those of you who are thinking a white elephant is an animal, yes, I'm sure there's white elephants out there, but a white elephant is a metaphor for something you have at home and you never use. Okay. And so I fill in that gap by just giving a little bit more explanation. And particularly with technical topics, run it past people who aren't in your department and go, is there anything here that doesn't make sense? And then fill it in that way. Great question. Bohale, do you remember the ad hoc aspects that you think about in the car? So I love that. How do you remember them if they come up in the car? I don't know if you know this about Beatles, but as a band, when they were in studio, they would jam a song, but they would not write it down and they would not record it. And if they came back there and they couldn't remember that song that they thought was so amazing the day before, they knew it wasn't a hit. So I find if you get something that's strong while you just talking to yourself, it should stick. If it doesn't stick, it probably wasn't going to stick for the audience either. So sometimes I reward, but other times I just trust that if it's going to stay. Okay, I hope that helps. How do you manage nerves that hit? Gosh, Lorato, great question. So sometimes they do that. You start strong and then suddenly it goes. This for me is being incredibly nervous. So I've seen people where suddenly their page starts shaking and then they just try to carry on. And I'm just going to in. That's when you actually find and they aren't. Imposter syndrome when asked to present at work. So I'll put it to you this way. I'm a world champion of public speaking. I still have imposter syndrome. In fact, I'm starting to think we should call it impossible syndrome because there's that voice in you that goes, you present on that. Impossible. Who do you think you are? That's what I feel we need to manage. That voice that's telling us it's impossible. Everyone feels like an imposter. There's always going to be someone who's better than you. But the way I manage that feeling of imposter is I come from my personal experience. I shared my personal story with you today because no, I'm not stealing that from anyone. That's my story. So take the content and go, how do I come from it from my frame of reference so that I've put myself into this presentation? And that's something for all of you to remember this. When you put yourself into a presentation, the audience takes a lot more from that presentation. When you make it personal, you make it powerful. So especially with imposter, go, okay, this is new. How do I come from a personal perspective? This is how I feel when I look at this. I was amazed to discover that. It makes it a lot easier. So imposter syndrome, we could talk about for years. Malcolm, out of all that 200 pieces of feedback, how did I choose? Look for themes in feedback. If you keep getting a consistent chunk of feedback from various people, it's time to change. Sometimes the feedback you just go, oh, yes, I love that. And it's easy. If it's not, have someone safe to bounce it off who's going to help you and keep another perspective. But look for themes. The themes really, really help. Any key aspects to avoid when starting out in your public speaking journey? And Paul, thank you. Great question. The one thing I learned from the 1999 world champion, Craig Valentine, is never be the guru of your speech. Never be the all wise, knowing one who has it all figured out. Learn the lessons from someone else. Audience doesn't connect to people who try and make themselves separate from the audience. They want to connect to people who are the same, people who've also struggled, people who are also figuring things out. And what a lot of people do when they speak is they think they have to be the expert. And I'm going to stand here and tell you, you should all exercise because exercise is good for you. And I know the truth. Maybe the way they've become passionate about exercise was that they were struggling with it. And a bit like I had with Joe, someone taught them something that changed their lives. If you speak from that place, and that's why I always share what Joe did for me. I didn't figure out confidence by myself. Joe taught me. And now I'm teaching you what Joe taught me. I didn't figure that out on my own. So don't make yourself special, make yourself similar. That's what I would really suggest, and speak from a personal place. Cool. Okay. And I know we're going to go a little bit over time. For those of you who want to stay on, I will answer the questions. If there are questions in between presenting, it's hard to bounce back and it can throw you. I get that. This happens so often, especially in corporate. As a speaker, you do have permission to control the narrative and to control the audience, but you have to let them know up front. So I told you at the start of today, there will be time for questions at the end. And I said that very clearly, that's what's going to happen. So in a boardroom, it's to say, I know there's going to be some questions, but I do have 20 minutes prepared. I'm going to ask you all to please hold your questions till the end because I don't want to lose my track, lose track of what I'm saying. Give yourself permission to ask for that. Not everyone's always going to listen, but then if they've agreed up front and they go, thank you, I know you'll remember I said I'm going to answer questions at the end. Can you just hold that and see if that helps you keep the flow? But also, if you filled in the gaps in your preparation, you should get less questions at the end. So that helps. And also ask people to help you think of all the difficult questions you might get and practice them before the event. Set yourself up for success. Whew. Gosh, well, I'm so glad you're feeling Joe. I think Joe's long since passed on. He was so special. How do you get over childhood trauma of being laughed at that tries to affect your confidence and creates fear of public speaking? Nicola, that's a big one. And that's where I say an organization like Toastmasters really helps, because you go to a club environment where everyone claps, everyone sends little notes of appreciation, and you face that fear one meeting at a time. That's the only way to face that, is to have warm eyes on you, people that are smiling, people that are telling you to go for it. That's how you, one little step at a time, overcome that. And then that's also work for getting a really good process or therapist who can just help you let go of it, because sometimes we give so much power to things that happened in our past that doesn't need to define us anymore. But find a place where you can learn by doing, and you'll find that really helps. Right, so I see things coming. Oh, intimidated by co-workers who are good at presenting. Also, very real, very normal, especially if you have to speak after them. Sometimes a little bit of humor of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm speaking after, John or Jody or whoever it was. But look at what they're doing that works. Take notes and go, well, how can I apply that to how I present? It still needs to be your authentic voice, but go, what is it about their presentation that's working? And trust me, if you start getting clear on your message for a presentation, the reason why you're giving that presentation, that will bring a different life force to it. Because I think when we're nervous, all we do is focus on the mechanics. We put together the PowerPoint, we work on the structure, we stand up, we maybe read it, and we forget to bring us. You forget to bring you because you're so worried that you're not someone else. It's about finding, this is how I present well, and come from that place. So I really hope that can help. I believe in speaking from the heart. Haha. Yes. It's the only place to speak from. If you want to change people's minds, you first need to change their hearts. And our job when we communicate is to speak to people's hearts, not their heads. It's so very, even when you're selling, if you don't get the heart buy-in that, oh, yes, this feels good, someone's not going to say yes, even if you've given them all the numbers and all the data. And that's why storytelling is so important. That's why using analogies, painting pictures, even something as silly as an analogy of a gift, much easier for you to remember this than if I'd just given you a lot of head content. I've given you content today, but speak to people's hearts, speak from that place of authenticity. The world is tired of people trying to be perfect. Vulnerability, honesty, integrity, that's what the leaders of the future are going to be required to bring. So definitely speak from the heart to their hearts. Absolutely. How do you handle when the audience gets sleepy or busy on their phones during a presentation? So this is going to be the hard answer. That's on the presenter. You are not doing your job to keep their attention if that is happening. And you have to step back and go, did I put this together in a way that it wasn't dressed to whom it may concern, but it was for this audience? Did I make them care upfront with my introduction? Have I used storytelling, analogy, really great slides, humor to keep them engaged? That said, if I'm teaching, and I teach this as a course, so it's 1 or 2 days, I have a very clear rule. If people come into my classroom, all their phones are gone, and we talk about what it does for us being present in the room, and how conflicting having a phone near us is. It draws our attention. So again, own your audience, own the process. Ask them not to have phones if you can. But if you can't do that, be so bloody interesting that they don't want to check their phone. That's my answer to that, Gladness. Right. How can we use a sticky statement or foundational phrase from someone else in our speech? Okay, great question. So I'm just not sure if, Malcolm, you are talking about that if you're using a quote of someone else or if you learned it from someone else. So I'll first of all speak, if you learned the message from someone else, my World Championship speech, the message of write a different story came from my dad. And I found a letter and I read the letter, and he said, if you're not enjoying your life, write a different story. And then I said, I repeated it by going, really, Dad, how do I write a different story? So now I've said my message twice, but it's from my dad, and now I'm resisting it. So it's good to show a bit of resistance. And then I said the letter was whispering at me. It was like the letter was whispering, write a different story. And then throughout the rest of the speech, I'm reflecting on that message. So, Joe didn't actually say to me, confidence is okay with not being okay, but Joe taught me that. And I always make it very clear. The thing I learned from Joe is that confidence is being okay with things not being okay. So I don't know if that answers your question. You can maybe put a thumbs up in the chat if I've touched on it. If you're using a quote by someone else, make sure it's personal. Make sure you be the change you want to see in the world by Gandhi. Tell the story of how you came across that quote, and then you can keep using it as your sticky statement. Someone's asking how they can link up with me to public speaking in the global space. Yeah, I think reach out to me, my website. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can contact me there. This game is an organic game. It's a word of mouth game. Come from a place of passion. Those opportunities will hopefully open up. Right, let's see. I speak confidently in my religious gatherings rather than in the corporate gatherings. So how can I boost my confidence? So I love that you are saying that religious, you're good. And that's because there's a purpose. There's a message in a religious gathering, and in a corporate gathering, we often haven't thought about, what am I actually trying to say? Why does this matter to me? So just getting clear on the why, the message, the purpose, why you're passionate about this content, why it matters, what's the lesson in it, that might help you access that. And then also saying you find it difficult to express your feelings, don't know how to be firm with your words, especially when you're not cool with something. So that can often be conflict management. It's very difficult for different personalities. And there again, it's looking for opportunities where you can upskill yourself. So I would highly recommend looking at some personality assessments like Insights Discovery, help you to understand your personality types. And those kind of assessments come with ways to deal with different personalities, ways to express yourself more powerfully. But that is a journey, and it's one I recommend going on. It's something we all can learn and benefit from, learning to own our voice and to say, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And sometimes taking 5, I'm going to come back and talk about this when I'm feeling a little less upset, can also be helpful. Okay, lots of questions. How do you, can you define authenticity, especially if you feel like an imposter or undeserving? It's a powerful question, Nombulelo. Authenticity is honesty. So being able to say, gosh, this is confronting for me. I don't know if this feel nervous that this has come to me. That's authentic. I don't think you always want to come across as struggling, and I don't think it's a good idea to make too many apologies to an audience. But the one thing that I think helps us, and again, I said it in an earlier answer, that helps us access authenticity is when you access your story. Your story. And it's very easy to think my story is not valuable because we don't see how we've been shaped and changed by the things that have happened in our lives. So maybe for everyone, do yourself a favor, go and look through your life, do a little inventory from earliest childhood memory to now. And what are the problems that you've overcome? Who are the people that have taught you something hard or beautiful? You know, breakups often shape us, and there's a lesson in that. So the people, the places, the problems that have shaped you, that have taught you things, that have made you passionate. And then start going, where do I bring these stories into my communication? My entire business, my entire job has been based on speaking about my failures. I didn't crack it as a singer. I do a speech on leading with optimism, happiness at work, because I had to overcome depression. You know, my only really big success came at 46 when I won the World Championship of Public Speaking. Up until then, I was actually talking about my failures and what I'd learned from them. And I wasn't using the speaking as therapy. I was now through it and going, here's a lesson. This is what it taught me. How can this help you? So trust yourself, trust that your voice matters and that your stories will add value. And that can help mitigate the imposter syndrome. So stammering and stuttering and how to pace yourself. So the stammering and stuttering is a nerves thing. And there's a lot of effective communicators who still speak with a stammer. So it's again, just accepting if that's happening. I've been speaking fast today because I'm excited and I have a lot that I need to share with all of you. A good rate of speech, if you are writing out your speeches, is between 110. So that's really, you've got time to pause, let people hear stuff, to about 150, 160 words per minute. If we had to listen back, I've probably been speaking closer to 200 because I've had so much to give. And I hope everyone's been able to keep up with me. But if I'm really preparing a set piece, look at about 150 words a minute. And that will help you get a good pace where you're not rushing. But then also look, where will I speed up? Because I need to talk. This is really urgent. This is really important. And where will I just stop and pause? Because I want them to hear what I'm saying next. You have to plan that, because if you don't plan it, you might end up speaking at one pace the whole time. So I hope that helps. I think the recording will be available. I see there's a question there, so that will be coming. They're typing you an answer. And what advice would I give to ladies who have not yet fully discovered their purpose? So that is a journey, Precious, what I can tell you. But what do you wish about? What do you get irritated about? That's also stuff to talk about. What do you wish would be different in the world? You know, and when you start really looking at what gets you fired up, especially when you're with friends, notice that people have so much energy when they're speaking in a social context, and then when they do a presentation, they kind of lose that. And it's often because we're telling our stories. So this is not about going, oh, I have to have a grand purpose for life yet. That can reveal itself. But what are you passionate about? What makes you laugh? What makes you cry? And lean into those. Why are those interesting to you? What's the theme that's coming through? And maybe through that investigation, that sense of broader purpose might become clear. But also ask the people who love you, what do they see? Because sometimes other people see the purpose that we're already fulfilling and we don't realize it. And so don't be afraid to ask for that feedback and go, wow, that's what I'm bringing. That's how they see my soul. Okay, beautiful, Precious. Paula asking, you know, I walk around when I speak, is that acceptable? As long as you're not pacing. The nervous pacing can be very distracting for the audience. It's all right to walk a little bit, intentionally walking to a part of the stage where you present something, then walking to another side to present something else. That helps the audience to follow you. So if it's authentic, if it's not distracting, go for it. Absolutely, Paula. What do you say to yourself just before you go on stage to center and motivate yourself? So today I was doing my power poses before. I say thank you. I say thank you for this opportunity, that I'm so lucky that I get to share what I'm passionate about with the world. Thank you for everything that has led me to this point, that I can share from a place of openness and passion. And then I breathe and I center myself. Some people play music. Some people pump themselves up. We've all got different things we do. But for me, I just try to come from a place of gratitude and go, how can I best serve my audience today? let me serve them. And that's what I do. So I hope that helps. All right. So the right mindset. How can you have the right mindset and be comfortable just before an important high stakes presentation or contest, apart from breathing or the power pose? So mindset for me is to also remind myself why I've put in all the work, why the message I'm about to communicate matters, to notice the nerves and go, thank you. My body it's trying to help me perform here, but I remind myself why I'm doing the presentation. And in the World Championships, those stakes were ridiculous. I had a whole continent wanting me to win. I've never felt pressure like that in my life. And it was very easy for the ego to kick in and make it all about trying to be a champion speaker and you've got to do a great job. And there was a lot of pressure. The sole perspective for me was with each of my speeches was to remember that I'm talking about my mom. I'm talking about my dad. This is for them. This isn't even about me. And that helped to ground me and to get my mindset right, to again come from a place of purpose, not a place of kind of personality, we'll put it that way. All right, great question. So Toastmasters, I'll actually ask, I know Justine is doing such a good job in the chat. Can you just pop in a link maybe for toastmasters.org? But also I have a very nice club. You can come and join us in Cape Town. We're also online. So we'll put in some links for you to go and have a look at Toastmasters. If you are passionate about finding your voice, finding your power, I can't think of a better organization to do it. Is it normal after speaking to feel that you could have done more? And is this also based on the fact that you changed the speech while you presented? Is that normal? 100% normal. In fact, I think it was Dale Carnegie said there are 3 speeches for the speech you give: the one you practice, the one you give, and the one you wish you gave. That is normal for everyone, especially if you've practiced it a lot and now you thought it had to be perfect. So it's very, very normal. Sometimes a speech just works and you go, that was what it needed to be. And other times you're like, oh, I could have done this. You are not alone. And again, you just have to keep giving speeches so that you get closer and closer to giving the speech you want to give. I hope that helps. How do you share a personal story if you need to include some people's names and they might not be happy? Can you change their name? Absolutely. So sometimes people will check with that person just to ask, do we need to change it? You know, can I talk about this? But other times changing a name is fine. They always say you should never ruin a good story with the facts. Sometimes we get so caught up in the facts that we put too much in. So changing a name, sometimes changing the timeline a little bit, as long as it's not a lie, but it's telling the crux of what happened, is good. And then leaving out characters that aren't important to the message that you're sharing, and just focusing in on the 2 or 3 key characters also makes it easier for your audience to follow. But there you have to be sensitive. Depends on the nature of the story. My world champion speech, if you go and watch it, I talk about living with my sister and my brother-in-law. And in the early versions, I was just saying it was my sister's spare room because I didn't want to add in extra characters. And then I thought, hang on, my beautiful brother-in-law Ross had me live in his spare bedroom for 18 months. He deserves a mention. And it was just a quick mention. So, you know, I didn't say his name. I just said brother-in-law and said sister. So yeah, I hope that helps. Kim, how do we kick the word out of our speech? Is there a way to acknowledge it so it doesn't control the delivery? These crutch words are there to support you. It can be very distracting if there's too many. I find that, think about this, when you're that voice in your head that thinks a lot, and I know you can all just kind of nod wherever you've got that voice that talks to you all the time. Does it ever say, Think about that. It knows exactly what it's telling us, often not great stuff, but it doesn't question itself. So again, ums and ahs are part of confidence. They're part of not being fully au fait with the content that we're delivering. So the more you practice something, the less those ums will show up. And also when we tell stories of something we're reliving and remembering, and I'm not having to think about what happened next, the ums disappear. So as you simplify content and make it more visual, maybe using an analogy, and you can see exactly where your speech is going, there's a little less thinking in between. So that's something to to try. Beautiful. Ah, the fear in career growth. That's a whole story that I would love to unpack with you, but that's around giving yourself permission to succeed. So there is an incredible process called The Journey by Brandon Bayes. It's a book worth buying. And the course that's started changing the course of my life back in, when was it? 8 years ago when I turned 40, was to go and do a journey workshop that it literally took off the ceiling. That was when I met my husband. I started making decent money. I became a mom at 44. I won the world championships, but I actually had to go do some deep work to remove those psychological blocks that I had taken from school going, that's all you deserve. So go check out the Journey, Journey South Africa. They have workshops for anyone who's wanting to take their life to the next level. Nothing to do with speaking, but it certainly helped me find my voice. So I hope that helps. How do you set the boundaries between being confident and egotistic? Oh, and I look youthful at 50. Well, thank you. Almost 50. Thank you. I'll take that. Confidence, if it's coming from passion, I don't think brings in that ego piece. I think when we've got that humility of where you learned the lesson, then I think people won't see confidence as ego. And I stand corrected. I'm not sure how I come across, because I know I'm confident and I trust what I'm teaching because I've seen it work. But I also am always trying to say, I learned this from so-and-so. This is this world champion. And that helps me to remember that I am not an expert. I am still a student, and I come from that place, and I back myself because I do the work, I show up, I know what I do works, but I'm always open to figuring out more. So maybe that's the way we balance it. Acknowledge where you learn things from. I lose confidence whenever I fail at anything, and I keep starting and start struggling in everything. So yes, Irene, that is what we call, and you see, I keep doing these things. This is called a fixed mindset. Go check out Carol Dweck's work on fixed and growth mindset. A fixed mindset sees failure as final. It's very normal. It's our ego trying to protect us. It's human nature. A growth mindset sees failure as a stepping stone to success. And it is something we can learn. Something as small as going, haven't figured it out yet. That word yet, it means we don't finish statements about ourselves with a full stop. You put in a comma, yet. I'm figuring it out. I'm going to find something that'll help me. That's a journey. And again, The Journey by Brandon Bayes, another beautiful resource to help give yourself permission. None of us deserve to go through life going, I'm not worth this. We all deserve to go through life going, I'm not there yet, but I'm figuring it out and I'm enjoying the journey. Whew, okay, I think we've got about 6 more minutes. We're going to call this at 1:30. Otherwise, I know everyone's got to get to their weekend. And look how many of you have stuck with us. Thank you. That is so cool. Are we able to be bold to share the personal experience with the expense that might impact some people? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Maybe impacting people that were part of that experience. If that's what you mean, Yenny, it's something we tread very lightly with. There are stories, if I mention relationships, I'll go, you can hear that didn't work out well. I'm not going to give stories. I'm not going to give background. I choose to keep that part of my life, and I don't want that to impact negatively on someone else. So again, just really, and also don't talk about something until you can laugh about it. That's maybe the best thing here. Do not talk about something until you can laugh about it, or at least go, yeah, it was tough, but this is what I've learned, because our speaking should not be therapy. We should have figured it out before we speak about it. Okay, Malcolm, you are keeping the Q&A busy. So the second part of the question, when we use someone's foundational phrase to support our message, don't get ready, stay ready, Craig Valentine, do we always have to reference the source? Yeah, I think it's useful to mention it, and then you can keep saying it, and right at the end, if Craig was here, he'd say, don't get ready, stay ready. So just bring it in. It shows that humility, it shows that acknowledgement of the source. So it depends. You're not always going to get it right. I'm sure I don't get it right all the time, but it's good to go. This is from someone else. How do I stay focused during a presentation? You stay focused. Is this as an audience member or as the person presenting? That's different. But if you're presenting, you need to be excited about your content. Your message needs to have fired you up. You must love the way you've put together your slides. You can go, it's clear, it's simple. I know where I'm going with the speech. As an audience member, it's the presenter's job to keep you focused. Okay. In a 7-minute speech, what do I memorize? Every single word. That's why I don't recommend only ever doing contest speeches. It's exhausting. That is and if anyone does go and watch that speech, it's very technical. You'll see it's not how I've spoken today. There's elements in how I speak today. But for a contest, every single word, because they're judging every single word. So that's high pressure. And for me, mentorship is crucial. It is key. It's the only way I became a world champion. The way I seek mentorship now is I follow all the speakers that I admire. I go to their webinars. I learn from them all the time. I sign up for their courses. So while I don't have time to always do one-on-one with them, I am learning from the people I admire. That's how I stay fresh with my speaking. Sandy, yes, you can join Toasted if you're happy to do it virtually. So I know Justine will give you a link, and we'd love to have you with us. All right. How do you know how to project your voice at the right volume, not too loud, not too soft? That's one, Nicole, that comes with practice. That comes with having people around you and just going, what's working? But when you're passionate, when you're excited about something, generally our volume gets to the right level. I'm not sure about what I'm saying. I maybe start speaking a bit softer. My nerves get in the way. Now no one can hear me. But that same quiet person, if they had to walk into a room and tell you it was on fire, they would find their volume. So that's just something you practice over time. Oh, right. Okay. Voice training. Yeah, definitely working with a vocal coach will help you with exercises to strengthen your voice. Absolutely. That can help. Okay, I think, and then the international space, it's starting to reach out to people on LinkedIn, creating relationships, finding where you can speak on, or just visit and network online on global platforms is a start of that journey. I have so loved being with all of you today. This has been absolutely fabulous. What a lovely way to start our weekend. And I just hope, I don't want to live in a world where people's number one fear is speaking in public. And I've completely forgotten to say to you, please go buy my book. I've given you 50% off today. It's on my website. It's an ebook. If you are wanting to just keep working on your speeches with a very practical step-by-step way to do it, I hope you're going to enjoy that and it's going to help you, because I don't want to live in a world where our number one fear is public speaking. I want to live in a world where our number one fear was that we didn't speak up in public. And especially, I know we've got some gentlemen on the call, but especially as women, your voice matters. It needs to be heard in the boardroom. It needs to be heard on platforms where you come from a space where your story is your currency. Who you are, the lessons you've learned, how life has shaped you. When you start sharing that with other people, you start influencing the world around you. And so it's not about us all becoming world championship, speakers. There's only one person who can do that a year. But every single one of us, you, me, all of us, we can grow as individuals, as women, every time we speak up, every time we trust that our truth is going to bring some value. And that's the only way you face that imposter syndrome, is to keep, I'm not going to listen to the impossible voice. I'm going to listen to the I'm possible voice. And I'm going to let that start helping me say yes to the opportunities and the moments that life is offering to me, saying, here's your stage. Are you ready to use it? So thank you all so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. Go out there, find your voice, find your power. Please keep in touch with me. I look forward to continuing this journey. And thank you to the Topco Media team for making this possible. Please give them a lot of love. The fact that they put this together got us all here. I know there's lots of people joining us live on Facebook, YouTube. This has been such a special time with all of you. And I just hope that you're taking away some nuggets, understanding that the gift of who you are is all that you need to be sharing. with this world. Let your word create your world. Thank you. And wow, big hugs to everyone. I will keep in touch with you online. Mwah! Bye.